We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
President Joe Biden says he's definitely running in 2024, and former President Trump appears to be outpolling Biden in 5 crucial swing states. Is America ready for 2 presidents to go head-to-head in electoral battle? Well, one thing's for sure, the media have already made up their minds. But is it all one big fake-out? In this age of theatrics and posturing, we have to wonder just how much of what we see is true determination versus spin and game theory. And on this week's episode, we'll be figuring the odds and peeking behind the political curtain to determine just that. Welcome to Liberty Nation Radio here on the Radio America Network. I'm your host, Mark Angelides. On today's show, we're looking into Biden's debacle on soaring gas prices, the twisting macabre that is the 2024 presidential election, constitutional sanctuary cities, and the issue of a crippled justice system, plus a whole lot more. I'd like to say a special hello to our listeners on KQDI on 1450 AM and 97.5 FM out of Great Falls, Montana. We really appreciate you. Remember, this show is proudly sponsored by LibertyNation.com, where you can access podcasts, breaking news, analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows to whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. Is anyone ready to believe that Joe Biden is seriously considering running for office again in 2024? Well, he says he is, and so does Jen Psaki. But is it all just smoke and mirrors to avoid an early exit from the White House and leave a deeply unpopular Kamala Harris fighting for a Democrat win when Americans go to the polls? And what of former President Donald Trump? Where does he fall in all this? Well, to answer these questions, we're joined by longtime host of Liberty Nation Radio and senior political analyst over at LibertyNation.com, Mr. Tim Donner. Welcome back, Tim.
Always a pleasure, Mark.
So tell me, does anyone really believe that Joe Biden is going to run for office again in 2024? Or is it all just a ploy for continuity in the 2022 midterms?
Well, imagine if they said, on the other hand, that he's not running. I mean, imagine the firestorm that it would create. Even though it wouldn't be surprising to anybody that's paying attention to his cognitive decline, which is there for all the world to see. They couldn't see it during the campaign because he was hidden in a basement. But they can certainly see it now, and it's extremely damaging that they've made a deal with the devil. They put in a guy who is way past his prime to be generous, and a woman who is deeply unpopular to the point that she couldn't even make it into the first primary in her own presidential run. And yet they have to say that he's running again in 2024, I think, Mark, for the sake of stability. I mean, what does it say if he does run again? I mean, what statement does it make about the Democratic Party that they can't find anybody other than an 82-year-old relic to represent their party? Well, what does it say if he doesn't run? It says that he shouldn't be president. You know, most presidents, Mark, they want to have an 8-year legacy. Biden is a placeholder, but he can't admit it. He's got time to recover from this deep hole that he's in, but not much. And the social welfare bill he's trying to pass is less and less popular with each passing day and each rising tick in inflation. So he's in a terrible spot, and nevertheless, he has to, for the sake of stability, say 2024, sure, I'm in. Why wouldn't I be?
Speaking of that inflation, Janet Yellen, in all her predictive brilliance, said that it should be over by the midterms. What a coincidence.
Right. Well, so the markets certainly respect impending elections, Mark.
Absolutely, absolutely. So speaking of Kamala Harris, now, the smart money is still on her for being the nominee in 2024, at least according to the betting odds, because, as you point out, to do otherwise would show that, initially, that making her the vice president in the first place was a major mistake, likely driven by, let's call it, race-based ideology. Now, are Democrats in for a tough time after the midterms, trying to extricate themselves from this situation and from this deal with the devil they've made with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris?
Well, Kamala Harris is at an all-time record low approval for vice president. I mean, she makes Biden look popular by contrast. She's at about 28%. He's in the 35 to 40% range. But the good news for Kamala, Mark, is there's nobody else. By default, she is the front runner for 2024 because most of the other people that ran like her to either disgrace themselves or devalued their political currency. People like Elizabeth Warren, Amy Klobuchar, Cory Booker, Julian Castro, these people went down and out. They devalued themselves to the point where they're not going to be taken seriously in 2024 because of their performance in 2020. So who else is there? Pete Buttigieg, I guess. He certainly doesn't seem sort of presidential timber, if you know what I mean. He's a meat.
Well, if he fixes those racist roads that we're all driving on,
well, I suppose that's the best they've got right now. But I'll still go back to Gavin Newsom. I think the California governor is lurking in the shadows, ready to pounce on what's sure to be an incredibly weak field in 2024.
Do you think that'll be a wide field like they had in 2020? Or do you think it will be down to just a few serious contenders?
I think a few serious contenders because there really isn't anybody else who has established themselves as ready for prime time. I mean, it's the years when Obama was president that's coming back to haunt them, Mark, because while he won 2 resounding victories for president, his party lost over 1,000 seats across the country in state and local and even federal positions. And it weakened their bench to the point where what you're seeing now is that someone like Kamala Harris is seen as a default candidate, even though she's wildly unpopular and proven totally unable to connect with ordinary people.
Now, speaking of those who are ready for the primetime slots, well, there's President Trump. And now he's been playing his cards very close to his chest regarding the 2024 gambit. And we're assuming that at some point after 2022, perhaps within a day, depending on how the results come in, that he'll be throwing his hat in the ring. But there's some recent shadow polling in 5 key states that these states went to Biden in 2020. And it suggests that this would be a clean sweep for the Donald. What do you make of that?
Well, I think people are at a point where they like what they don't have. They liked Biden because it wasn't Trump. It's hard to say, but I wouldn't characterize the Donald as playing his cards close to the vest, Mark. I think he's been very transparent. I think it's only for the purposes of the many things that happen once you are a declared candidate that he doesn't want happening yet, that he hasn't jumped right back in. And I think, look, if January 6th hadn't happened, I think that Donald Trump would be a clear front runner to win a second term in 2024. But the big unknown is how people really feel about January 6th and how they will feel when they are inevitably bombarded with 24/7, 365 footage of the January 6th insurrection and Capitol riot. How will people react to it?
Well, we'll be covering how that turns out. Now, quick fire answer from you, Tim. If Donald Trump runs in 2024 and if, beyond all belief, Joe Biden does as well, current president versus former president, who's going to win?
Well, first of all, I don't think there's any chance that Biden's going to run again. But if they go head to head again, I'd have to give it to Trump because I think that people are looking at the results of Trump versus the results of Biden, a zero personality against a hyperactive personality. I think Trump wins, but I don't think Biden's running. I'm almost sure he won't. He's going to be 82 years old. Yeah. He's going to be even more feeble than now.
Well, the action always follows the action. Tim Donner, thank you ever so much.
Love it. Love it. Thanks, Mark.
You're listening to Liberty Nation Radio. Later in the show, we're going to be asking why legally trained politicos are calling for federal charges against Kyle Rittenhouse. But right after this short break, we're back with national columnist Sarah Cowgill to discuss constitutional sanctuary cities. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides. Who are we? We are Americans that believe in liberty. We are a project of the nonprofit One Generation Away. We are patriots who apply the founding principles to the issues of today.
And they keep moving the goalposts on us.
We are educators and commentators who love America and the Constitution. Who are we? We are Liberty Nation.